I remember getting an appraisal for one of my buildings in Newark, New Jersey. And I always share this story with clients, partners, or any business relationships that I have that are interested in real estate because there are so many people that, could possibly think, "Oh, well, I'll just get an appraisal and that's going to be an accurate representation of the value of my property." It couldn't be further from the truth. And here's why. I'm evaluating a 10-unit building, right? So it's technically a mixed use multifamily predominantly building, which means that there's 8 units that are apartment units, residential, and then there are 2 units that are storefronts. One was a Chinese restaurant, and the other one is a barbershop. So that one's actually going to be transformed into a liquor store by one of the newer tenants that we're getting in there. However, before we even get there, when we ordered that appraisal, we understood as experienced real estate investors and real estate agents that appraisers are not always going to be accurate because you also have to ask yourself the question, who is the appraiser? Where is he coming from? How familiar is he with the neighborhood? Is this somebody that is evaluating with the proper comps? Is he missing anything or leaving anything out? So when you get an appraiser to go out to your property, never just take that for what it is. Take a look at that appraisal with a professional if you don't know what you're looking at so that you can go ahead and look at it and actually see for a fact if it's something that you can go by. Because that appraisal that I got on that property was not an appraisal that I could go by. When he was doing the appraisal, he was utilizing comps from surrounding pockets of the same city, but didn't necessarily reflect the rental prices that the apartments were renting for in the, you could say, Ironbound section, which is where my building is, right? They were getting comps from East Newark. They were getting comps from Irvington. They were getting comps from certain pockets within that one city that didn't necessarily reflect the prices in the North Ironbound area, right? So the reason why I'm saying that appraisers aren't always going to be accurate is because of something like this could completely throw off the value of your property. When a multifamily property is evaluated, the way that multifamily properties are evaluated is based on the rental income. They're going to see how much money that building is bringing in or is going to bring in based on the rentals in the area. Now, if you're not matching it up with rentals in the immediate area and now you're going out and looking at other areas that are surrounding but don't necessarily have, you could say, the same kind of neighborhood as the area that you're buying your property in, it could throw those numbers off. Case in point, in the Ironbound section, a 2-bedroom apartment is going for anywhere from $2,500 to possibly $3,000 a month, while in Irvington, those numbers are completely lower, right? Those numbers look more like $1,500 to maybe $1,800 a month, right? So now if I have 3 2-bedroom apartments, you can see now the biggest difference is the numbers are going to be off by possibly $2,000 to $3,000, right? A month of monthly income. And that can mean a lot because now that's reflected on how much the building is producing in regards to income, which then it gets evaluated based on the income and the expenses. And I mean, in my specific situation, the building came out to be appraised at $1.3 million, which was completely false. It was completely false. So then I actually had to go out of my way, look up comps myself. I have access to the MLS because I'm a real estate agent. And this is what I mean. It's always good to be around, whether it's yourself or somebody that you can trust, a professional with a good pair of eyes that can look at these comps and look at the appraisal and say, okay, well, what comps did they use? You know, who is the appraiser? Where is he from? How familiar is he with the neighborhood? What did he take into account the specific location, or did he go too far, right? Let me see what his comps are, how his comps show, the condition of his comps. Are these newer comps or are these older comps, right? In regards to the condition, because our apartments are going to be brand new. It's a brand new construction, right? Well, brand new renovation, but everything's going to be new. It's a gut job. So when I'm asking all of these questions and I'm looking at this appraisal, I can tell for a fact how the appraiser and what the appraiser used to come up with these numbers. And we ended up having to reach out to the bank and say, hey, we don't agree with this appraisal. And then they had us fill out a form that allowed us to put 3 comps that we would use that the appraiser didn't account for that would completely change the outcome of the appraisal. So when we put those three comps and we basically commented within that application, the reason why this comp is a more accurate representation than the one that the appraiser used is because proximity, it's closer to my building. The condition reflects a lot more because it's going to be a newer apartment. The amenities, right? Our apartments are going to have washer and dryer in unit. Some of those apartments didn't. But the biggest one was location, right? So as soon as they started to realize that the comps that the appraiser used didn't necessarily accurately reflect what our building was worth, what they ended up having to do was look at the appraisal and then give us another more accurate appraisal, which then raised the numbers from 1.3 to 1.9, right? So that's a $600,000 difference from just a conversation, from just the knowledge that I had, the eyes that I have just to look at the appraisal and say, this isn't right because of all the things that I've mentioned. And these are things that you can use when you're getting an appraisal on your home, right? Also, even when you're looking to sell a property, I know some agents that they priced their property and they listed on the market for $400,000, and now they have a bidding war, and let's say they accept an offer for $440 because they want to force the appraisal to come out higher. A lot of the times what they would do is they would actually tweak the list price, raise it to $450, so when the appraisal looks at the property, they're like, oh, well, it sold relatively quickly because they're going to look at the days on market, right? Which means if typically the properties that sell relatively quickly must mean that they got a decent offer, probably around the list price, but because we raised the list price from $400 to $450, it probably is going to come out around that range, you know? So there are so many ways that you can manipulate the appraisals. And I've heard stories about certain agents getting phone calls from appraisers saying, hey, what do you know, I know that you guys listed it for this much. What kind of offer did you get? So you got to really be careful and you got to really be aware that appraisals is just an estimation. At the end of the day, it's an opinion. From me giving my clients comparable properties in a CMA, right, a comparative market analysis, that's called a broker's price opinion, right? I'm not maybe certified to be an appraiser. However, from my experience of selling real estate in the last 6 years, you have to really understand that it's all about the data that's in front of the person that's interpreting what it means and interpreting what the property of your value is. That's ultimately going to decide based on that data that they have in front of them what the property is going to appraise for, right? And again, you can utilize this knowledge to your advantage, you know? Whether you want the appraisal to come out higher or whether you want the appraisal to come out lower, it's also a networking business, right? So a lot of people don't talk about these things because, you know, it's kind of something that gets swept under the rug. However, these are real things that happen. I think the best way that you can actually understand the value of your property is to meet with somebody that's honest and that's willing to give you the proper information and the proper data with backed up facts and details and a description to why they believe that your property's worth X amount, while taking into account the neighborhood, the bedroom, the square footage, the lot size, even down to where the property's located, not just in regards to the city, but also where it's placed, right? Is it too close to the road? Is it secluded? What does this mean in your specific neighborhood? Is that typically more desirable? Is that less desirable based on the market trends? So these are all things to take into account when you're reviewing an appraisal, when you're reviewing comps, because it's not just about, oh, well, my house has 3 bedrooms and this house has 3 bedrooms, even though they're 5 miles away. That one sold for $200,000, so my house is worth $200,000. No, it's not like that. And that's also why you have to be careful with Zestimates, right? Because Zestimates are basically just utilizing an algorithm that isn't necessarily taking into account the condition of your property and doesn't necessarily have creative ways to figure out what the value of your property is if it's a hard property to comp, right? Like something that I do for my clients is, let's say I can't find a specific house that has sold in regards to a similar style than your house that you're looking to appraise. I'll look in that specific price range that I believe the property's worth, and I'll allow my own pair of eyes and my own experience judge the houses that I'm seeing. Are the houses in, let's say, the $1 million price range similar to yours in regards to square footage, in regards to lot size, in regards to amenities, or are they more valuable? Are they less valuable? I like to look at all of these properties and then, okay, well, if that's not a good strategy that I can use, let me go ahead and estimate it through acreage, right? How much are properties selling per acreage, right? So if a property sells for $1 million and it's 1 acre, now I know that properties that are selling for $1 million typically come with 1 acre, especially if I see a pattern within acre properties that are being sold, right? So these are all creative things that you can do to get an understanding and get a feeling for how much properties are selling for and what is an accurate representation of what your property's worth. Even things like school districts, right? In the area that I'm in, are these properties in the same school district? Because sometimes buyers shop for houses that are in specific school district. So that could also be a reflection upon the price. All of these things you have to take into consideration, and this is why I believe you shouldn't just throw your hands up, allow the property to be appraised. And also, the last thing that I'll mention is the kind of appraisal, right? Because one thing that I know is when you get an FHA appraisal, at least in New York, if you get an appraisal with an FHA, that FHA appraisal is going to stay there for a few months, right? So should another buyer that's also utilizing an FHA loan, they might actually have to go based on that last FHA appraisal that was done. That's different with conventional, right? You can still rebuttal that FHA loan appraisal if you notice that maybe your property is it's a corner lot, right? Or maybe your property's in a cul-de-sac and they didn't take into account. That adds value to your property. Maybe your property is a 2-car garage instead of a 1-car garage and they didn't estimate that. These are all things that add value. Maybe you have an in-ground pool. Maybe they don't have an in-ground pool, right? All of these things add value to your property. And that's why you have to be very, very smart, very, very picky, be able to sit down, educate yourself, analyze the appraisal, be able to rebuttal these appraisals if you need to, because you have to ultimately protect the equity of your home, right? All right, guys, so that's my take on appraisals. My name is Jose Rodriguez, team leader of the REJ team. If you need me to ever look at anything or give you guys some feedback on any of your real estate deals, feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to put my email down below, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Peace out.